Trump apparently only prepared for a 4 to 5 day war against Iran, and he assumed that if the United States were to kill the Ayatollah Khomeini, that Iran would immediately want a ceasefire and that Donald Trump would be able to declare a victory and that war would not spread throughout the region. Donald Trump was warned that his personal views that that's what would take place were wrong, and he was indeed wrong. Hat tip to Ynet. They were the first to report, and they're based out of Israel, that Donald Trump is now begging Iran for a ceasefire, and Iran immediately rejected it and said when there will not be a ceasefire will be on our terms. And now one of the major issues the United States is facing is, will we be running out of munitions? Do we have the capabilities for a long-term war if this drags out for many, many months? And in addition, we've learned some horrific news this morning that a number of our soldiers, a number of U.S. service members have indeed been killed in action during the war already. We've learned that there have been, so far, 3 U.S. service members killed in action. 5 have been seriously wounded so far during Operation Epic Fury, is what the Trump regime is calling it. We're referring to it at the Midas Touch Network as Operation Epstein Fury, or the Jeffrey Epstein War. The U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, announced the deaths of these 3 U.S. service members. 5 are seriously wounded. We're following that. We're expecting, sadly, the number of deaths to increase. These casualties, as Open Source Intelligence Defender also notes, these casualties are likely the result of Iranian ballistic missiles and one-way attack drones that have been striking U.S. bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates, with some bases suffering much more serious damage than had been previously reported or announced by CENTCOM. Indeed, our government is giving false information saying that the attacks have not been serious against our bases, only for us to learn later that they are indeed very, very serious. And now our service members have been killed, and Donald Trump has blood on his hands, and this whole regime in the United States has blood on their hands. Iranian's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, he is alive, and he's stating this morning on state-run television that the Interim Leadership Council is now operational and has assumed constitutional control of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Pezeshkian adds that we will continue the path of the leader with strength. Our armed forces are crushing the bases of enemies. No sign by Iran that they will be stopping their retaliatory actions against U.S. bases and U.S. interests within the Middle East anytime soon. In fact, here's a statement that just came out from Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They state that the 7th and 8th waves of what they're referring to as Operation True Promise are underway, targeting U.S. bases across the region. The IRGC claims that the Ali al-Salam Air Base in Kuwait has been completely disabled. They're claiming the number is 560 dead and wounded when it comes to Americans.
Oswald.
With U.S. Central Command putting that number far less. And I do think that Iran exaggerates, but I also know that our government, the Trump regime, lies about everything. So we're going to be paying close attention to that. But the retaliation by Iran has indeed been fierce. In the central Jerusalem or central Israel area, in a city called Beit Shemesh, there were at least 6 individuals killed in this central Israel area. 14 people are still missing. We expect that the death toll will be rising there with ballistic missile and other strikes by the Iranian regime. We are seeing more Iranian strikes in Bahrain. Also, an Iranian Shahed drone hit a French naval base in Abu Dhabi. We can show the video of that right here. Multiple explosions have been seen and impacts from Iranian drones and ballistic missiles were reported at the Zayed port, a commercial deep water port that serves Abu Dhabi within the United Arab Emirates. You can see here Iranian reports stated that a drone struck a UAE oil platform in the Persian Gulf, and it does appear that this oil platform in the Persian Gulf has indeed been hit. And we've been seeing this in Doha. We've been seeing this in Bahrain. We've been seeing in Doha's in Qatar. We've been seeing this in UAE, in all of the kind of neighboring countries. An update on the Strait of Hormuz. Remember, this is where 20 to 25% of the liquefied natural gas, like our oil supply, traverses through the Strait of Hormuz. It's a narrow strait off of Iran. Well, the Strait of Hormuz now is at a standstill as Iran has apparently begun firing on all of the oil tankers that are near it. There's huge congestion on either side. And we will see what goes down there. Reuters is confirming as well that at least 150 tankers, including crude and LNG vessels, dropped anchor in open Gulf waters beyond the Strait of Hormuz, and dozens more were stationary on the other side of the choke point, shipping data showed after U.S. and Israel strikes on Iran. I'll just show you what's going on in Iran. I showed videos about this morning as well. But throughout Iran right now, in their city centers and city squares, you have a lot of Iranians coming out calling for revenge after the death of Ayatollah Khomeini. You've heard a lot of people in Iran are saying death to America. You hear chants like that. Just look at this scene, even in Yemen, for example, because one of the things to note about the Ayatollah is that the reach and influence was beyond Iran. This is why it was so foolish for Donald Trump to believe if you just kill the Ayatollah, you're going to disable the Iranian regime. You're going to get a new, more extreme Ayatollah, is what the CIA warned Donald Trump and what we've been talking about here. And we've been seeing America consulates and embassies across the Middle East now being attacked. And we also saw a number of agencies, intelligence agencies across the world representing Western countries, including here in the United States, warning against terrorist attacks and Iran activating terrorist cells. One of the things we are looking at right now, and our heart goes out, of course, to all of the people who died in that tragic shooting in Austin, Texas, at a bar there that took place at like 2 a.m. in the morning. Apparently, it was someone who was here from Senegal, and the FBI right now has activated its counterterrorism task force. I think there's a few individuals who died, multiple people who were injured at the shooting here in the United States, and that's being investigated perhaps as an act of terrorism, although more information is needed before I could report further on that. But here is just to show you what looks like the scenes in Iran right now. This is Iranians calling for revenge after Khomeini's death. Here, play this clip. Yeah, FBI officials are indeed confirming in a news conference that there were indications of a potential nexus to terrorism in this Austin mass shooting that has left 3 dead, 14 injured. It is being investigated as an act of terrorism as well. If Iran is prepared to bomb the Gulf states, it is also prepared to activate sleeper cells. Many people are, of course, acknowledging that reality. But we'll give you more information on Austin when that becomes available. A reminder of what took place in Karachi, in Pakistan, where the United States has a consulate there, where the locals were protesting and storming the U.S. consulate. Many people were killed, the people who were protesting, as government forces shot at them. About 6 individuals, I believe, or so were killed there. But just play the clip so you can see the sign outside of that consulate. Let's play it. Also, we have to focus on a lot of things that are happening in this region. For example, Israel has been closing its crossings into Gaza Strip, including for humanitarian aid workers. This is happening. You know, we knew every time Donald Trump was saying, oh, there's a ceasefire and things are great right now in Israel and Gaza. I'm like, absolutely not. There are hundreds and hundreds of people who are still being killed in Gaza. There was never actually a ceasefire there. Donald Trump does these fake ceasefires, and it makes the world far more dangerous as a result. But if you look over here about the story of how Israel is closing crossings into Gaza Strip, including for all humanitarian aid into Gaza, very little right-wing media is covering this. This is almost exclusively being covered on the left wing and on center, so-called center media. We need good media diet right now. Right now, it is so critical. I'll just give you an example as well. Over 260 outlets reported on this story. Woman killed by ICE in Minneapolis, identified as Renee Nicole Good, but sorting through the amount of coverage has been a nightmare because depending on which outlet I was looking at, I get a completely different version of events. That's exactly why we partnered with Ground News. I mean, look at the story that I've been sharing with you right now. If you watch the right-wing media about what's going on in the Middle East, I'll show you in a moment, they'll be like, oh, Donald Trump's a hero. This is what everybody wants. And it's like, no, we don't in the United States. We don't want regime change wars. If you're going to do a regime change war, you got to tell us about it. That's why I get my news from Ground News. People are like, where do you do your research? Ground News. And that's what I do for this episode because they're the best tool for me to stay objective with my reporting. Ground News is an app and a website that pulls in thousands of articles from around the world and organizes them by story to show you how the left, center, and right are framing the story differently. For every story, the color-coded layout makes it easy to see the political bias of each source. I can filter for high factuality sources and see what sources are independently owned or owned by a large media conglomerate with corporate interests. This lets you compare reporting on the same issues in one place, so you can come to your own conclusions based on all of the facts. On this article, for example, Ground News quickly showed me that out of the 260 articles reporting, only 17% of them are right-leaning, meaning if you tend to read right-leaning news, you may have missed the story completely. Yeah, you probably are missing that story completely, which is why Ground News even has a dedicated blind spot feed, a personal favorite of mine, which highlights stories being disproportionately covered on either side of the political aisle to help burst through echo chambers. Because I believe in Ground News so much, we at the MeidasTouch Network will be offering you 40% off the same Vantage plan that I use for my research, the type of research I do for this video. Just go click the link in the description or go to ground.news/MTN or scan the QR code up here. It's one of the biggest discounts they've ever offered. If you want to support this channel and get a clearer understanding of the world, try out Ground News. Also, I mean, look at this right here. You want to know why you need to try it out as well? Look at what our Department of Education building, or at this point, it's a department that destroys education. They have banners of Charlie Kirk on the Department of Education building. So it's miseducation. It's all about propaganda and lies. And I'm going to show you the propaganda machine now in action, as I promised you I would moments ago. So what's Donald Trump saying right now? With all of the facts that we know, with Donald Trump begging for a deal, begging for a ceasefire, now it's not going as planned, Donald. Donald says, Iran, they could have made a deal. They should have done it sooner. They played it too cute. Why were they playing it too cute? That was a direct quote from Donald Trump by The Atlantic, that Iran played it too cute. Everybody, we just lost 3 service members, 5 have been seriously wounded, and that number is expected to increase significantly. Oh, because Iran played it too cute. Is that what you're going to say as American flag draped coffins come back to the United States? Iran played it too cute, so we need to do regime change. The hell is going on there? Also, speaking this morning with Fox News, Donald Trump said that the U.S. knows how many targets are left in Iran and that they are progressing toward Iranian people taking control of their destiny. It's moving along. It's moving rapidly. Nobody can believe the success we're having. Nobody can believe it. Nobody can believe the success. I can't believe we're winning this much. This guy is a con artist. This guy is a lifelong fraud. He is a lifelong loser. And if you want to know why Donald Trump has bankrupted most of the things he's touched, if you want to know why his social media platform only made $3 million in revenue and lost $720 million in revenue last year, it's because he is a complete loser. He is a predator. He is a felon. He is a sexual predator. He is a fraud. He is a con artist. This is all he has done his entire life. Get it through your head that this is a bad, bad human being who surrounds himself with other losers and scumbags. Speaking of which, here's Lindsey Graham making his rounds on the various media networks this morning, and he's asked, well, does the president have a plan to guarantee that Iran will no longer do the things you say they're doing? And Lindsey Graham goes, that's not his job to have a plan. Why would he have a plan? Here, play this clip.
Moving forward, in a social media post Sunday, President Trump wrote this, quote, hopefully the IRGC and police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and work together as a unit to bring back the country to the greatness it deserves. Is hope the plan for the future of Iran?
No, the future of Iran is going to be determined by the Iranian people. The new Iran, whatever it is, whether it's a cleric or a representative democracy, our goal is to make sure it cannot become, again, the largest state sponsor of terrorism. That's a win for us.
But is there a plan to make sure that happens, Senator? Is there a plan? Does the president have a plan to guarantee that that happens?
No, it's not his job or my job to do this. How many times do I have to tell you? Our job is to make sure Iran is no longer the largest state sponsor of terrorism, to help the people reconstruct a new government, no boots on the ground. We don't own, you know this idea, you break it, you own it? I don't buy that one bit. It's in America's interest to make sure the Ayatollah is dead. He's dead.
More from Lindsey Graham right here when he's asked, so is the United States, we're officially at war, confirmed? He goes, the Ayatollah would say so. Let's play this clip.
Senator, let me start with the big question. Is the United States at war with Iran?
I think the Ayatollah would say, yeah. I don't know if this is technically a war, but here's what I can say the headline is for me Sunday. The mothership of terrorism is sinking. The captain is dead.
More from these MAGA Republicans. Tom Cotton, who is one of the people who he leads the Intelligence Committee. He's not intelligent at all. He is asked, do you believe the American public is owed something more than just Donald Trump making a Twitter video after we've gone to war? Like, I don't know, maybe going to Congress and getting authorization as the Constitution requires. But these MAGA Republicans, they are fascist enablers. Here's what Tom Cotton says. Play this clip.
According to CBS polling, 74% of Americans said that Trump would need approval from Congress for military action against Iran. He did not seek that. If this operation takes weeks, which is how you described it, do you believe the administration has effectively made its case to the American public to expect casualties, to support this action?
Well, Margaret, I thought the president's 8-minute video yesterday was outstanding. It laid out Iran's 47-year campaign of terror and revolutionary violence against the United States and our people and really the civilized world. I'm sure the president will speak more in the coming days.
47 years. He did not describe imminence or justify that in that video. Do you believe that the American public is owed something more than a Twitter video?
Well, Margaret, I think an 8-minute address to the American people, whether the president posted on social media or whether it happens on your network, is in keeping with presidential custom of addressing the American people. Again, I'm sure that he's going to be speaking more in coming days. The administration will be briefing Congress, and we're going to have a vote in the Congress. The Democrats are forcing a vote. I expect there'll be overwhelming Republican support for our troops, for our troops, and for the president's decision to finally eliminate the threat of Iran.
Or how about MAGA Republican Congress member Mike Turner, who used to pretend that he's a moderate? They aren't. They are fascist enablers. This is who they are. This is why our country is where it is, because of these scumbags. Here, play this clip.
Inventory, they had continued, as had been declared, to pursue their intention of nuclear enrichment. They had continued.
Rubio said they weren't enriching.
They had continued their intention to pursue nuclear enrichment. They had said and declared that they were going to do that. Their programs had not been completely abolished, and their intention had not been abolished. They remained a threat, and the fact that we had the ability to intervene, that imminence is incredibly important.
More from Tom Cotton right here.
A key part of President Trump's campaign, and it included it in his inaugural address, was no more wars. And there are a number of Republicans who think that this is the opposite of what they voted for, that the president is breaking that promise. Tucker Carlson told ABC the president's decision to strike Iran is, quote, absolutely disgusting and evil. What do you say to members of the MAGA base who say this is not what we voted for?
Well, Dana, I've been on the campaign trail all across Arkansas for the last 2 days, visiting with hundreds of Republicans. I haven't heard a single Arkansan express anything but unqualified support for President Trump and for his decision to finally put America's foot down and end 47 years of terror and revolutionary violence by the Islamic Republic against the United States and our citizens. And I suspect you'll see overwhelming support from elected Republicans in the Congress who are answerable to our voters in places like Arkansas and states all across the country when we're back in the Capitol later this week.
Senator Tom Cotton.
Now I want to hear from Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, at least some refreshing, candid, real talk right here. It's why I'm a big fan of Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. Here, play this clip.
Nobody in this country is asking for war with Iran, just like months ago, no one in this country was asking for war with Venezuela. This president is intentionally tanking our economy. He's the most corrupt president in the history of our nation, and Americans want him to focus on the crises here at home. Instead, he is busy getting us involved in quagmires overseas that already are becoming deadly to American soldiers. This is a disaster. It is illegal. And the president is obligated under the Constitution to come to Congress and ask for an authorization of military force. He wouldn't get that authorization if he asked for it. Congress wouldn't vote to give him the permission to do it, but he's obligated to come to Congress.
The administration.
And there you have it right there from Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. Thanks everybody for watching. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers.
New Midas merch drop. Check out the latest pro-democracy sticker packs, t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and more. All at store.midastouch.com.
There's a way to purify river water using 2 pieces of scrap metal. No filter cartridge, no battery, no electricity. Just copper and zinc touching each other inside dirty water. The reaction starts in seconds. Bacteria die, heavy metals bond to the surface, and chlorine vanishes. The water comes out cleaner than what flows from most city taps. Ancient Egyptians knew this 4,400 years ago, storing drinking water in copper vessels to keep it safe. The Greeks did the same, so did the Romans, and so did the Aztecs. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, documented copper as a purifier around 400 BC. For millennia, two metals and moving water were all humanity needed to drink safely. Then, in 1984, a man named Don Heskett accidentally proved the modern science behind it. He dipped a brass pen into chlorinated water and watched the chlorine disappear before his eyes. Within 3 years, he had a patent, and within a decade, NASA was using the same principle aboard spacecraft orbiting Earth. But today, the water filter industry generates $35 billion a year, selling you plastic cartridges that expire every 60 days. A method that uses two metals from any hardware store for under $5 cannot be packaged, branded, or sold on subscription. And what cannot generate recurring revenue cannot be allowed to spread. They did not bury this because it failed. They buried it because it worked too well. This is the story of the Earth filter, the oldest water purification method on the planet, and how a $35 billion industry made you forget it ever existed. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. If you're not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and the bell. This is where we dig up what the outdoor industry buried. The year is 2400 BC, somewhere along the fertile banks of the Nile River in ancient Egypt. An Egyptian healer prepares water for a wounded soldier, but he does not boil it, does not add chemicals, and does not pass it through sand or cloth. He pours the muddy river water into a vessel made of hammered copper and simply waits through the night. By morning, the water is transformed. It smells cleaner, it tastes pure, and it has a faint metallic clarity that the healer has come to trust with his patients' lives. The soldier drinks, his wound does not become infected, and the healer records this practice not as magic, but as established medicine worth preserving. The Smith Papyrus, one of the oldest medical documents ever discovered, written around 2400 BC, specifically describes using copper to sterilize drinking water and treat battlefield wounds. This was not a folk remedy whispered between villages. This was codified medical knowledge carefully inscribed on papyrus and preserved across generations of Egyptian physicians. Across the Mediterranean, the Greeks independently adopt the practice within centuries and expand upon it significantly. Hippocrates, the physician whose oath still guides every doctor practicing today, writes around 400 BC about copper compounds for treating leg ulcers, open wounds, and pulmonary diseases. But his most important contribution to our story is what Greek sailors begin doing on their long, dangerous voyages across the Aegean Sea and beyond into uncharted waters. Water stored in wooden barrels aboard ships turns green and foul within days at sea, growing thick algae and breeding bacteria that causes violent dysentery, killing sailors by the dozens on every major voyage. Water, stored in copper containers, stays drinkable for weeks, sometimes months, even under the brutal and unforgiving Mediterranean sun. The Greeks do not understand bacteria. They have no concept of ions or oxidation reduction reactions, but they can observe the result clearly. Men who drink from copper vessels survive, and men who drink from wooden barrels die. The Romans take the principle further than any civilization before them, engineering it into their infrastructure on a massive scale. Roman engineers install copper piping throughout their legendary aqueduct systems, arguably the most advanced water distribution network the ancient world would ever build. Water flowing through copper pipes arrives at public baths, ornate fountains, and private households noticeably cleaner and safer than water flowing through lead or clay alternatives that other civilizations used. The Roman physician Pliny the Elder, writing in the 1st century AD, documents copper solutions for treating ear infections, painful mouth sores, intestinal parasites, and a variety of skin conditions that plagued soldiers and civilians alike. Roman legions carry copper vessels on military campaigns stretching across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, relying on copper-treated water to prevent the waterborne diseases that historically killed more soldiers than enemy weapons ever could. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away across the Atlantic Ocean, the Aztec civilization, with absolutely zero contact with the Mediterranean world, independently discovers the identical principle and reaches the same conclusions. They gargle with copper mixtures for sore throats, they infuse ceremonial water with copper to prevent wound infection, and they regard copper as a sacred material, intimately connected to both physical healing and spiritual divine protection. Two great civilizations, separated by an entire ocean and thousands of years, zero contact between them, arriving at the same discovery, and that is not coincidence or accident. That is fundamental chemistry patiently waiting to be understood by modern science. Stay with me, because what a man with a brass pen stumbles upon in 1984 changes everything we thought we knew about water filtration. In India, a sacred tradition begins that has continued completely unbroken through millennia to the present day. Hindus store holy water from the Ganges River in copper vessels called tamra jal, and they have maintained this practice faithfully for century after century without interruption. Modern researchers at the University of Southampton tested this ancient practice under controlled laboratory conditions and published their remarkable findings. Water stored in copper vessels for just 16 hours showed a 97.7% reduction in harmful bacteria, including E. coli, Salmonella, and cholera, causing Vibrio cholerae. Not with a manufactured filter, not with chemical additives, not with... And the water filter industry definitely knows.
Man, this is some crazy stuff I am seeing, my friends. This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We have two very strange messages. One from the Anthropic CEO about what AI is up to, that is going to take a ton of jobs. We got two guys doing this. We got a guy from YouTube as well. Apparently saying something, co-founder of YouTube, putting out an interesting tweet on X. We'll get into that. We have also Billy Boy Clinton as well, testifying, and you're not going to believe what I discovered, what is actually happening. Some ironic twist as well. And we're going to get into a ton of other stuff. Also, his wife and Gates, Bill Gates, and also some other stuff. Let's just get going here. Let's start with this weird thing from Anthropic. CEO just announced AI will get rid of 50% of lawyers, consultants, and finance professionals within 12 months. This is on 60 Minutes. Let's check this out.
You've said AI could wipe out half of all entry-level white-collar jobs and spike unemployment to 10 to 20% in the next 1 to 5 years.
Yes,
that's shocking.
That is the future we could see if we don't become aware of this problem now.
Half of all entry-level white-collar jobs.
Well, if we look at entry-level consultants, lawyers, financial professionals.
Okay, I'm going to explain what's going on here. Okay, I haven't seen anybody put this all together. I'm going to put it together for you right now. Okay, I just explained some of this. I didn't realize how much it all is intricately woven together. All right. We had Rachel Wilson on Joe Rogan, I think it was yesterday, and she's had an interesting clip go viral over on X regarding what happened in the 1970s. And now it's very obvious to me, all of this was, of course, planned out. It's just super obvious. And it's extremely complex, which shows me it's some pretty smart people that thought up this clever little trick that they instituted here, okay? So what's going on is in 1970, and actually maybe I'll play that clip really quick. All right, let me play this clip of Rachel Wilson on Joe Rogan. And I'm going to show you what they planned all this stuff out. Okay, it's like super obvious to me now. And it's all to rob you. It's literally to rob everything from you. Okay, check this out.
Prior to the 1970s, we had 5% of mothers with school-age kids working outside the home. And for all of human history, even during the Industrial Revolution, 17, 18, 1900s, like you said, in the 40s and 50s, you could be a janitor and support a family and have 4 kids on one income. And something shifted in the 1970s, and it's never shifted back.
So she goes in, and I can't play it all because it's Joe Rogan, and I don't want to get hit with the copyright. She basically goes into how the whole dynamic works. So you have supply and demand, right? Supply for workers, demand of workers, right? So what happened was in the 1970s, all the women joined the workforce, which basically doubled the workforce. Obviously, you have double the supply. You only have so much demand, which ended up causing wages to go down. This is why everyone's complaining about not being able to afford anything. It's because there's too many workers. That's one. Two, on top of that, they took the dollar off the gold standard, which I've talked about before. I've shown numerous times in the past, if you've been following my channel for a little while. There's a article called What the Fuck Happened in 1971, I think it was. Is that how it's written? That's kind of weird. It doesn't do autofill when you do this word here, WTF. Here's the thing here, and you can see what happened in 1970 is wages went sideways and work went up. Actually, here you go. So net productivity went up and wages pretty much went sideways. And then on top of that, you have double the workforce. So you have double the workforce. You got them printing money in the background because they took the dollar off the gold standard at the exact same time. So it was all intentionally planned, is what I'm saying. 1969, what did you have? Sexual revolution. This all fits together perfectly. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, you look at the entire thing, it makes perfect sense. Someone planned this out. Someone straight up planned this out. He knew exactly what would happen, knew there would be too many workers, so they're like, oh, we need to make robots to replace them. Oh, AI, that will be the next step after this. So they wanted to get your family separated. So they get the woman in the workforce. And so now you have someone else taking care of your kids. They go to a school, public school, and then they get indoctrinated there. Then your wife goes to college before she gets married to you, went to college to get a degree. And then a lot of these professors, of course, are feminists and Marxists. So then that was also part of the plan as well, to get them to think a certain way. But what's interesting is if you look at all the occupations women get into, it's very similar to the some of the things you would do in the home, like take care of kids, nursing. You become a nurse, you're taking care of people. You take care of your family, you take care of people. Same kind of occupation, just one inside the home, one outside the home, right? Make food, you become a chef or something like that. There's a lot of different occupations. Doing the books for your husband's company. Oh, you become a CPA or something outside the home, or you work in the business setting, or you're in an office, your HR department, or whatever. So all this stuff in human relations, right? So it comes back to human relations because women tend to be focused on human relations. So they all purposely designed this so they could get you out of the home, make you have half the wages, work twice as hard, end up being indoctrinated in the process, and then eventually they wanted to replace you all with robots. Now, it sounds crazy. You're like, oh, what are you talking about? You're crazy. No, actually, I'm not crazy. Just go read the emails. Go read the files, and you'll see I'm right. Because it makes perfect sense if you actually want to admit it. A lot of people don't want to admit this stuff. No one's that crazy. No one would do that. Why would they do that? Because they want to. Okay, because they wanted to. They want to make more money off you. They got the print money in the background and steal it from you, too. I mean, they got rich off robbing you, and you didn't even know it. Humans across the planet are freaking out after Chad Hurley, co-founder of YouTube, randomly posted. Hope everyone enjoys their last year of meaningful work. This is what he posted, apparently. Many viewers believe this is a warning about the future, and Chad has access to information that led him to know the claims are... I mean, dude, everyone has access to the information at this point. In short, majority of people on X who saw this tweet believes this is a warning about the future of AI, how it could replace us all. In a year, I don't believe it actually will happen the way they're thinking, though, because they've already seen some evidence that it's not true. Because we've seen a number of companies that fired people to replace them with AI. Half those jobs have came back to regular people. So that does indicate, though, it does work 50% of the time. So it's not going to be probably as doomsday-ish as it sounds, but it's going to be like a slow, creeping doomsday-ish. I'm guessing it's more so probably what it would be. That's my theory, based on what I'm seeing so far. Not very good, but I think we do have an answer to all this. You see all these people that are in these files? You see these emails? You see all these evil bastards getting away with everything at the top? You know what would work and solve this entire thing? Put them all in prison. Get rid of every freaking one of them. And then we can start over clean with normal, good people in charge and actually have our jobs because they may actually care about you enough, unlike these people who care nothing about you. And of course, instead they play victim like they are the victim. Bill here testifies on Epstein ties before Congress. I'm a victim. As someone who grew up in a home with domestic abuse, not only would I have not flown on this plane, if I had any inkling of what he was doing, I would have turned him in myself and led the call of justice for his crimes, not sweetheart deal. Shut up, dude. We know that's not the case. We know almost all these politicians are lying. I don't care if they're on the left or right. They're all full of it. Most of them are lying. He's trying to claim like he's a victim and he would have did the right thing if he had a chance to. And apparently he's also committed perjury in his opening statement. What kind of country are we in? If we let child, of course, traffic and those walk, monsters like this should be held, of course, accountable. What does this say? Though my brief acquaintance with Jeffrey ended years before his crimes came to light, and though I never witnessed during limited interactions any indication of what was true. Shut up! Dude, we have a picture of you swimming in your birthday suit with Ghislaine. Straight up, and also another girl who, of course, has been redacted, which means she, of course, was, under age. I mean, you got to pretend, well, that was charity work, according to his wife, Hillary. That was charity work. He was saving millions of lives while swimming naked, apparently. I am here to offer what little I know so that it might prevent anything like this from ever happening again. Shut up, dude. Dude, this is so stupid. But before we start, I have to get personal. You made Hillary come in. She had nothing to do with them. Really? Then why was Ghislaine at her daughter's wedding? Nothing. She has no memory of even meeting him. Okay, Bill. Okay, let's solve this little problem here. I never met him. Okay, here's the Epstein emails. Hillary is much prettier in person. Meetings with Hillary are not easily discreet. I know you're close with Hillary. Intimate fundraising event with Hillary Clinton. Even Hillary's lying about him. Jeffrey was lying in his emails about the meetings also. Which one sounds more likely? Is it Jeffrey or her lying? Good question. That's a good question. What does it say? High heels, walk, not a great idea. You could carry me. Does Eva live close to you? Hey, Hillary is much prettier in person. Okay. What does this one say? I know you were close to Hillary, but she gets the nomination. You vote for her. Oh, okay. That's weird. Okay, so these are his emails. Actually, there's something at the top, too. What was at the top? Here we are. Meetings with Hillary are not easily discreet. Okay. So you can see there, clearly, they're not fully telling the truth there, are they? Not really. You have, of course, ironically or unironically, them delivering pizza boxes of pizza being delivered to where they're testifying. Same day. While they're testifying, they're delivering pizzas there. Is this some sort of rubbing it in our faces or something? Right? You got the pizza, of course, gate. We're talking emails were originally discovered way back when. You remember that? When was that? Like 2015 or something? That was like 10 years ago. That was like 11 years ago. I remember talking about it back then. This is so insane how long it's been. These emails were presented in the world by Wiki, leaks, which were originally obtained by Brave American. We're talking Seth Rich. You remember this guy? I remember talking about him back in like 2016, 17. He found out that the DNC rigged the primary against his favorite candidate, Bernie Sanders. Seth worked for the DNC, had special access. He then downloaded the emails and gave it to him. So then we all saw the emails. Huh. Yeah. Yep, I remember that. That's just really how ridiculous this whole thing has gotten, my friends. It's really that ridiculous. And we got some more stuff, actually. I wanted to get into... So, I was trying to explain... I explained about this whole thing. If you think about this whole thing, it makes sense. Okay, look. They took the dollar off the gold standard exactly in 1971. They told women to get into the workforce exactly in the 1970s. They had the sexual revolution, 1969. All these things happened at the exact same time, which is interesting. When did JFK die? I'm trying to remember when that was. When was that? 1963. Okay, that was before then, of course. But it was Tricky Dick. That's the one who took the dollar off the gold standard. It was after, right? Richard Nixon. By the way, they just had another release of files, and it's not the one with the island. It's something completely different. It has to do with an owl. It has to do with a grove. Okay, you know that song Bohemian Rhapsody, right? I think you know what I'm referring to now. Which, by the way, they have a picture of Tricky Dick living or going there. But apparently a lot of other people did as well. I didn't even know about this. This just came out, by the way. Yesterday night, I think. The Bohemian thing.
So far, so good.
They had a bunch of emails or something come out about this. That came out last night. It was a bunch of people on the list. My researcher told me about it. Let's see if I can find it anywhere. Yeah, he was one of the ones that was there. And he's the one that took the dollar off the gold standard. That's kind of weird. Yeah, here it is. I think it was New York, was it Times, that released the entire list of him, all that went there. Apparently it's a lot of people, and it's apparently a lot of people you wouldn't expect as well. Adder, you might want to go check that out. I'm not going to read the list, but I think Clint Eastwood was one of the people on there. There's some other ones as well, lots of other ones. But it's just, this world's turned into the Twilight Zone at this point. I don't know what to make of it. It's pretty crazy. And I'm going to get into the Hillmeister over on my other channel. You got to see that. It's some crazy stuff, my friends. And there's so much of this stuff I'm now finding. It's just endless. We have Bill Gates as well that I'm going to get into over on my other channel. Also, apparently, I have a theory about what's going on, and I don't like the theory, so I might kind of go over that in my other video more so. But my whole entire point with this whole thing with Rachel Wilson, I think this is important, what she was saying about what's going on, because it really puts it all together when you start to see it. Because like I showed you with that original post about AI. So think about this. Remember 2020, right? Remember the whole thing, right? Come on, think about it. Less and less, of course, people. Oh, we can have robots. Oh, AI is going to take the jobs anyways. We don't need them anymore. See what I mean? This is what I'm talking about, man. It all fits together. It's so crazy. And you could just say, oh, you're just seeing stuff that ain't there. I don't think so. I don't think I'm seeing stuff that ain't there. It's there. If you want to see it. At any rate, I think you get kind of the idea. But also, I mentioned over on another video about Jim Carrey. He looks a little crazy, looking a lot different than he used to. I'll get into that more. But this whole thing with Bill Clinton and what he's saying, let's go check out a couple other things on Bill Clinton real quick, and then we'll leave it at that. And then you guys can go check out my other video. But we got some interesting stuff about Bill Clinton here. What is that? Demi Moore? Oh my goodness. Okay, here, one sec. Yeah, here we are. We got Hillary right here. Okay, here we go. What is she saying here? Hillary Clinton abruptly ended her press conference after being asked about Ghislaine was invited to Chelsea's wedding. This is what I just mentioned earlier. Even after she claimed that she never knew her. Okay, let's check this out. Let's see what she has to say.
Ghislaine Maxwell invited to Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to the daughter of Chelsea?
A lot of life and destiny is fragile. Someone has to protect it.
You'd already been mentioned in a civil lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre before that. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted before that.
She came as the plus one, the guest of someone who was invited. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all.
She thought she planned that out, man.
Together, little one.
That's pretty clever. Oh, we didn't invite her. She came as the plus one of some other person we invited. Oh, that's we didn't know her.
If only all your guys were so agreeable.
I don't know who she is, even though the emails say I know. Even though the emails say I know and I met Jeffrey.
The battle starts in
I don't know who he is.
4,
of course,
3,
all of them are innocent.
2,
Everybody's innocent except for Jeffrey, which of course he's conveniently, allegedly dead.
Got it?
At any rate, that's my video. Kind of wonder what some of you guys think about all this. Let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.
If you go back to and when Wesley Clark said we're gonna invade 7 countries in 5 years, what you were talking about were the countries where those central banks were not on board to do programmable money. And their governance structures were not on board with essentially, because of Epstein, I'll call it the Rockefeller Rothschild model. There was an effort to say, okay, we're going to basically assert control of the central banks in those countries. That's my interpretation. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much tension around Iran is because Iran right now is the big leakage in the system.
How?
So,
Wait, it's not about their nukes?
No. So, well, you know, Iran's central bank counts. One of the reasons it counts is because their oil and energy is very important, including for China.
Yeah.
And that's very important in the BRICS system. What the BRICS system is trying to do is to create independent payment systems. But if you're going to come out with programmable money, with digital IDs that are interoperable globally, and programmable money that controls in each jurisdiction centrally, you can't afford leakage. And so you've got way too much leakage in the system to proceed with what they're trying to do. And Iran is, and the BRIC nations are a sticking point. And certainly Iran's oil, you know, feeding China gives China greater independence.
That's all it took? Really?
So you think that one of the motives behind toppling all these governments was the creation of the control grid we're talking about now?
Right. So if you go back, so you had the wonderful Richard Werner on your show.
Yeah.
And Richard has a book called The Princes of the Yen, which is about the sort of effort to take over the Japanese central bank. And I think what you're looking at, I think part of the state of play with both Russia and Iran is how are you going to make sure that those central banks are entirely in the system?
So, yeah, that was an amazing interview. And he told the story about writing this book on the Japanese central bank. I can't imagine a more obscure topic from my non-economically minded standpoint. It'd be like writing a book on postcards from the Falkland Islands. It's just like, okay, a book on the Japanese central bank. And he said, well, actually, they suppressed it. I couldn't get it published in the United States, and you can't get a copy. And that's like checkable. So I checked it. You can't get a copy of that book. It's really hard.
I think you can order from its publisher right now.
Okay.
Right.
But, I mean, that, like, why would someone try to suppress
because
a book?
it shows you the true, it takes you right into the secret governance system, and it shows you the primary mechanism by which they implement policy.
Yeah. Well, it's always the things you're not allowed to say are probably the important things. Right. I mean, whenever they penalize you for having a thought, you're probably on the right track.
Well, it's one of the critical train tracks of control. So it's what I call the third rail. So I used to finance transit systems and train systems. So, you know, a lot of these systems have two tracks that the wheels go on, and then they have a third rail that the power line runs on. And you get a trim trap that flips over and sucks the energy from the third rail. So a lot of the things that really operate the third rail are very invisible. And for example, in central banking, to talk about tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 capital at the BIS and the banks, there's nothing more boring. It's designed to absolutely...
I just fell asleep in the middle of that sentence.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Is it boring by design?
You know, the way you're taught to talk about it is boring by design. You know, but it's like the mechanisms of the legal system. If you look at the mechanisms of civil procedure or criminal procedure, you know, it can, and you get into the weeds on it, it can be very boring unless you understand the application, and that can make it very interesting. But the capital, most people don't understand the capital's, you know, sort of regulatory system. And yeah, it can get very, very boring.
Can you just, for people who haven't seen your previous talk, explain what the control grid is, what it looks like, and what it means?
So the control grid is a process or an infrastructure that allows digital technology to be used to assert phenomenal surveillance and control of people.
Yeah.
And at the very heart of it is what I call programmable money. So it's money that is no longer just a currency, it's money that comes with a set of rules that can be surveilled and enforced. So imagine back in the pandemic, if your money, if I said, okay, you've got a lockdown and your money won't work if you leave your house. You can't buy gas in your car because your money is programmed with AI and software to enforce a whole set of centralized rules. And programmable money allows the bankers who've been running monetary policy to now control fiscal policy and essentially replace legislatures and executive branch by making and enforcing the rules through the money. Now, that requires a large infrastructure of surveillance. So you need digital IDs, and then you need the hardware locally and globally to do the surveillance and implementation. So, for example, if you look at the local hardware, and now people are seeing it, now that it's material, they're beginning to see it snap into place. So I don't know if you know flock cameras, but there are many communities across the United States that are entering into contracts paid by the taxpayers to put up cameras all around their neighborhood that track license plates and keep that data and share it with a variety of people. Or you have the FCC is trying to overrule local controls on cell towers, so they can literally put cell towers every 400 to 700 feet so that they can have the kind of invasive surveillance you need. Or you have satellites now that can literally beam in Wi-Fi so that whether you have Wi-Fi in your home or not, they can start to track you. And all those systems put you in what I call the panopticon. So we saw in the Middle East with the first war with Iran, we saw 11 leaders out of 12 sort of top leaders in science and government assassinated because they're literally tracking everyone, and they can identify them and track them, and then you have invisible weaponry that can then take them out, or, can identify missile strikes. So
let me ask you about, so you're talking about the 12-day war against Iran in June of 2025.
Correct.
We were led to believe, just as newspaper readers or news consumers, that those 11 Iranian officials were targeted with human intelligence, that Israel had spies inside of Iran, but you're saying that was done digitally.
I would assume that that's probably true, because you always want to get human confirmation of what the systems are telling you. It's always better if you have both. But we are now moving into building out the kind of surveillance systems that can literally track, identify, and integrate with not only our existing weaponry, but ultimately autonomous weaponry. So let me step back. You've got three parts to the control grid. One is the local hardware and infrastructure, and that includes the data centers. Because the
data, I thought those were for AI.
They are. Because if you look at what it takes to apply the equivalent of a social credit system to people's money, so the social credit system I apply to you is different than the one I apply to me. And if you look at the data I need to track you and test whether or not you're following the rules I've given you and enforce those rules, it's an explosive amount of data, particularly because you're looking not just at financial control, but spatial control. So what is AI good at, Tucker? AI is
spatial control, movement control?
Yeah, so turn off the car. So Congressman Massey is trying to kill the kill switch in your car. That's because spatial control means I can turn off your car, or I can set it so your money won't work more than a mile from your home or a 15-minute city. So you're not allowed to leave your 15-minute city, and your transportation and your money won't work outside of that area. So let me step back. So what is AI good at? AI is very good at tracking things that can be expressed mathematically. And financial transactions and spatial movement can be expressed mathematically. And so what the AI centers are for primarily is to build that digital control grid and to manage that data. So, and now it can be used for many other purposes too. So it's not just going to be used for control. But to me, that's the primary purpose. And that, if you look at the cameras, if you look at the cell towers, if you look at the satellites, and then the AI, the data centers, those are all component pieces of the local hardware. So there are three sort of pillars that I track. One is the programmable money, and that's what we at Solari are trying to stop. The second is the digital ID, because you need digital ID systems that are interoperable globally, and then the local hardware. And those are sort of the three pillars. And what's interesting is there's phenomenal development of all three. We have a commentary at Solari where we track, it's called the Fast Approaching Digital Control Grid, and every week we update all the things that are being done to build those three pillars and have them integrate with each other. And ever since the inauguration, it's been moving very, very quickly.
You'll need a top-notch team to win this one.
Here for a long time already, but it looks like the rich are worried because this could impact the stock market. So let's talk about it a little bit. Now, one of the arguments is that AI is going to play into all of this, and not in the way that you're expecting. AI is definitely going to harm jobs for ordinary people, but there's also an AI bubble that I have fully bought into, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So let's start with Dimon. Here's what he just told JP Morgan Chase investors. He says, quote, "My own view is people are getting a little comfortable that this is real, these high asset prices and high volumes, and that we won't have any problems." So there absolutely are asset bubbles in the country right now. These asset bubbles overwhelmingly impact affluent, wealthy people who are invested in the stock market or who are looking at the value of their home or the equity that they've built on their home, thinking that that equity is real. It is real theoretically, but it's partially pumped up through artificial forces. And what I mean by that is, when you're not building housing and there's limited supply and people desperately need housing, right? There's high demand. Well, that drives up the value of your home. But we need to build more housing. So you shouldn't be wedded to your equity, because you should be comfortable with your equity going down just a little bit so we can have more housing supply, right? That's a good example. Another example of asset bubbles, take a look at the stock market. Look at stock buybacks. So when you see the value of shares go up, but you haven't really seen any change in innovation, you haven't seen any change in productivity, why is the value of these shares going up? It could be stock buybacks. It could be due to cheap money through the Federal Reserve printing, pumping liquidity into the system, things like that, basically. So he says, you feel stupid when everyone's coining money and everyone's great. It does feel really good. And then when I think about all the factors taking place, I take a deep breath and say, watch out. Okay. So what exactly is he referring to? Again, the stock prices of large US companies are reaching dizzying highs that really don't make much sense. And there are signs of major asset bubbles. And to understand what I mean, you have to become familiar with it's called the cyclically adjusted price to earnings ratio, or CAPE ratio. I'm going to call it CAPE ratio moving forward, right? So the ratio compares stock prices to how much profit companies are making. So the S&P 500 reported an average CAPE ratio of 40.1 in January of 2026. That's the highest reading since the dot-com crash in September of 2000. So basically what Jamie Dimon is saying right now is that the value of these assets are too high. It's artificial. This bubble is going to burst eventually. The index's monthly CAPE ratio has only been that high 22 times since it was created in 1957, 829 months ago, meaning the stock market has been so expensive less than 3% of the time in history. And so Dimon stated, quote, "I'm not assuaged by the fact that asset prices are high. In fact, I think that adds to the risk." So specifically, Dimon explained that he is worried about the fate of software companies if AI technology continues to improve. And that brings us to a post that was written by Citrini Research. Okay, so that was published over the weekend. Anyone paying attention to economic analysis is kind of freaking out about this report. I want to tell you a little bit about what it said. So it's a report that was written about a hypothetical future in which AI lives up to all of the hype, all of the expectations that we've been discussing on this show for a while, and ends up disrupting the economy / destroying the economy as a result. So the speculative date of the report is June 2028, about 2.5 years from now. The unemployment rate printed 10.2% this morning, a 0.3% upside surprise. The market sold off 2% of the number, bringing the cumulative drawdown in the S&P to 38% from its October 2026 highs. So private credit is unraveling. Prime mortgages are cracking. By the way, no one's paying attention to that at all, other than me, apparently. But those like subprime mortgages, they've been back. And we're currently living in an economic situation where consumer debt is at an all-time high. I don't know what this is going to mean for subprime mortgages in the near future, but it's not looking good.
Don't count us out
It
yet.
should have been clear all along that a single GPU cluster in North Dakota generating the output previously attributed to 10,000 white-collar workers in Midtown Manhattan is more economic pandemic than economic panacea. AI got better and cheaper. Companies laid off workers, then used the savings to buy more AI capability, which let them lay off more workers. Displaced workers spent less. Companies that sell things to consumers sold fewer of them, weakened, and invested more in AI to protect margins. AI got better and cheaper. A feedback loop with no natural break. So what this report describes is widespread job loss. We've been worried about that. Plummeting wages, a crisis of mortgages, because if you don't have a job, how are you going to pay your mortgage? If you have a subprime mortgage, you're probably going to be in a lot more trouble. And also a bloodbath of companies suddenly rendered obsolete due to AI technology. Not good, right? Now, apparently the report struck a nerve. Every stock that this report mentioned by name was down in afternoon trading on Monday. The co-founder of DoorDash, for instance, one of the companies that went extinct in this analysis carried out by Citrini, even came out and publicly addressed the report. What did they say? In the report, DoorDash is destroyed because AI agents are able to code a plethora of alternative delivery apps. Those same AI agents then direct customers to apps that can undercut DoorDash's pricing model. And so Andy Fang, DoorDash's co-founder, stated that the company is aware of the changes that AI technologies will bring forth and working very hard to stay on top of those changes. Okay, we'll see. So all of this leads to a big question. If these predictions of an economic apocalypse are correct, when exactly is this going to happen? When can we expect it to come true? And interestingly enough, that was a hard question that was asked to CNBC anchor and journalist Andrew Ross Sorkin, who just wrote a book about the 1929 stock market crash. Let's hear what he has to say about all of this.
I think we are invariably headed towards some kind of correction, if not worse. And if you look at where our economy is today, given all the spending that's going on in artificial intelligence, somewhat indiscriminately, I would add, at valuations that are, shocking, the rubber will meet the road at some point. Charles Merrill, who founded Merrill Lynch back in 1928, told people to get out of the market. Now, you might think that was a brilliant thought, except for the fact that from the beginning of 1928 to September of 1929, the stock market went up 90%. It's not just knowing that there's going to be, a correction of some sort or a crash. It's getting the timing right and knowing when to get on, off, and on the train again.
When it comes to AI, something to kind of look out for is some of these AI companies are like devastatingly over leveraged, meaning that they've taken out a tremendous amount of debt, more debt than their companies are worth. So when you talk about the AI bubble, that's what people are referring to. And when you look at what transpired before the Great Depression, people were literally taking out debt in order to invest in the stock market. So people were over leveraged in order to play part in a stock market that looked amazing. But in reality, you notice similar trends in terms of asset bubbles in the lead up to the Great Depression. So timing aside, Sorkin believes that we are eventually headed for a crash, and that's in part due to the circular spending in the AI space. He explains more in the next clip.
So OpenAI, has just made a $100 billion commitment to NVIDIA. It doesn't have $100 billion to commit. So what's happened here? NVIDIA said, you know what, we'll finance you. So effectively, NVIDIA is giving OpenAI the money that OpenAI is going to give back to NVIDIA.
Well, are you suggesting that's a scam, or are you suggesting that the timing of the way leverage works and being paid back is such that it causes these disruptions, depressions possibly, or corrections more optimistically?
If you get to a terrible moment, it's the leverage which sucks the confidence out of the system, because it's not just that there's a correction in the system, meaning it's not just that some of these stocks fall by 20 or 30%. It's that if you're leveraged, you owe 3 and 4 times that.
And you can't come back.
And you can't come back.
Is that where we are?
I think that's where we are probably right now.
Now, if that isn't concerning enough, in this next clip, you're going to hear the most haunting portion of the interview, if you ask me, because in this clip, Sorkin is going to describe his interactions with the mega rich people who are in control of the economy as we speak. What are those conversations like? What are those exchanges like? He's about to tell you.
They ultimately believe that ending inequality is also ending, is an end to their, potentially to their, an end to their affluence. It's funny, for all of the talk about, increasing the size of the pie.
Yeah.
I think they also recognize that there might only be one size of the pie, and who's taking which piece is the question.
But they don't sense the resentment, much less hatred.
I think that they clearly get the resentment and the hatred. By the way, most of these people feel very alone in that way.
I see you wiping a tear away from the corner of your eye.
I'm not. I'm just suggesting that I think when you think about these people at the very top, I actually think they're very cognizant of the resentment. Certain people have taken a position that they just don't care.
Okay, great. I mean, if they don't care, then let's just say it with our whole chest. We don't just resent them, we hate them. They've destroyed this country and this economy. Many of them are the same crooks who have dragged this country into wars that we shouldn't be involved in on behalf of Israel. These are the worst people in the country. They don't love the country. They just see everything about, what can I get out of it? How can I benefit from this? Screw the American people. These are the people who have been enabled by our political elite, who have been bought by the corporate class, right? The Epstein class. These are the donors. These are the they feel so lonely. A lot of them are being outed right now in the Epstein files, which is great. I hope one day they feel lonely in a prison cell. But for now, unfortunately, we have to deal with them because we have a political class that doesn't want to rein them in at all because they're bought by them. Anyway, story just broke. We're going to do a longer piece on this tomorrow. I want to do it with Cenk, and I want to really do my research on it. But JD Vance just announced that the Trump administration will be suspending Medicaid payments entirely to the state of Minnesota. I believe the state of Minnesota and any state that is denied these resources should immediately suspend their federal taxes. Why am I paying this piece of crap, useless federal government and getting nothing out of it? F the government. Stop paying your federal taxes. These people don't deserve a freaking dime.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.
This is gonna hurt.
Trump administration just attacked Iran, and everybody's talking about the political side of if this is right, if this is wrong, but that's not what I want to do. Instead, I want to talk about the financial side of this because this affects everybody. Now, to be clear, this is not an easy thing to do when people are losing their lives. However, it is important for you to understand this because anytime you hear the news that the United States is attacking another country, it is going to impact the economy, it can impact your gas prices, it can impact the value of your dollar, and that's why it's important for you to understand this because if you're thinking about retirement, you have money invested, these things get impacted when these types of geopolitical events happen. So I'm not here to discredit the impacts of a war, I'm here to educate on what that means when it comes to things like money. So let's break this all down because as soon as the news came out that the United States attacked Iran, we saw a lot of money move immediately. we saw oil prices shoot up. Oil prices grew at one of the fastest rates we've seen in a day in years. Gold prices shot up. We saw the stock market in general go down while certain stocks went up. We saw defense stocks, which are the companies that are providing military equipment. Those stocks went up. And we saw other stocks like airline stocks go down. And that's where the financially savvy, when these types of things happen, they immediately start moving their money. Because what Wall Street does is they don't care about the emotion. What they do is when things happen, they ask, where is the money moving? And that's what they start to do, is they want to identify where the money is moving. That way they can change where they park their money, because that is then an investment opportunity for them. Now, again, I'm not here to be the judge of your moral compass. I'm here to help teach what Wall Street does. I'm here to teach how these things impact the economy. So let me explain this one by one. And I do want to let you know that this is why on March 18th, I'm hosting my live investor workshop, because we have so many changes happening in our economy right now that thinking about retirement can be a little bit stressful, because there's changes in the stock market all the time. There's concerns about what's happening with gold prices rising so fast. There's concerns about geopolitical tensions. There's concerns about the value of the dollar. All these things create concerns for people that are investing their money, and that's why on March 18th, I'm having this workshop to educate how you can use these changes in the economy to your advantage, to be able to grow your investments by finding opportunity through research. I'm going to be presenting a lot of research that my firm has done. It's live, it's free, it's virtual. I'm doing it twice on March 18th, once in the morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, again in the evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If you'd like to register, it's free. I have the link for you down in the description below, should you be interested. Now, anytime you hear of uncertainty, especially when you hear of war, people want safety. And safety in the investment world means gold. That's what it has meant for decades. And that's why as soon as we got the news that the United States is attacking Iran, we saw gold prices go up. At the same time, we saw some movement down in the stock market, because people get concerned of, if we're going to spend all this money in a war, could that push us into a recession? And that's when we saw the general stock market go down. And certain stocks got hit a little bit harder than others, like airline stocks, because we saw a lot of airline closures, especially near the Middle East, because of this. And if airlines are not running, well, that means they're not going to be making money. That's why those stocks get hit. At the same time, we saw oil prices boom. Now, this one is extremely important, and this one impacts many people in many different levels. It's not just gas prices, but let me explain why. The Middle East is a big hub of oil, but it's not just a big supplier of oil. It's also big in the supply chain of oil, because there's something called the Strait of Hormuz. And this is where a big chunk of global oil goes through. And Iran controls what happens in this strait, in this supply chain of oil. And they have threatened to close this passageway many times. If they close that passageway, that makes it more difficult to transport oil, which makes the price of oil go up, because now all of a sudden it's a lot more expensive to get oil from one part of the world to the other. Well, now what we've seen happen after this attack is that Iran has been pushing away ships, essentially shutting down the strait. Now, we'll see how long this stays and what this actually means, but investors are looking at this saying, if we continue to keep the supply chain of oil down, it's going to make getting oil to other countries more expensive. Oil prices are going to go up, and that's why we saw oil prices rise at one of the fastest rates we have seen in years. Why does that matter? Well, that can obviously impact gas prices, but higher oil prices can impact the price of everything, because when you go to buy avocados at the grocery store, those avocados have to be shipped or driven by a semi-truck from the farm to the warehouse to the store. And so when you have higher oil prices, that means now the grocery prices go up as well, because the cost to get the groceries into the store is more expensive. It also means vacations become more expensive, not only because you have to pay more gas for your car, but also because the airlines have to pay a higher rate for their fuel. So airlines become more expensive. And so when you have higher oil prices, it impacts the price of everything. Why does that matter today? Because today there's already been concerns about inflation. Earlier this week, the Federal Reserve Bank essentially said that the inflation problems might not be getting better the way that a lot of people thought, because we got a new inflation report this week, which said that producer inflation, meaning inflation for businesses, is higher than expected. Why does that matter? Because if businesses are seeing a higher cost of raw materials, then they generally pass that cost down to consumers, to you when you go to buy products, because if businesses have to pay more money to produce their stuff, they're gonna have to charge you more money to sell that stuff. So inflation is already a problem. If oil prices go up, gas prices go up, the prices of things go up, well, that can make the inflation problem worse. Why does that matter? Because we're seeing a lot of changes when it comes to money right now. And I'm going to shift gears a little bit to understand the full picture of what's happening, because the central bank here in the United States is called the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, although they're called the Federal Reserve Bank, they're actually not a bank, because you and I cannot go there to deposit money. They're not a reserve because they're not sitting on any cash reserves, and they're not federal because it's not a part of the federal government. Well, the Federal Reserve Bank is going to go through one of the biggest changes that we have seen in the last decade in the next couple of months, because the chairman at the Federal Reserve Bank is going to be replaced by a new person that President Trump has just appointed. Why does that matter? Because like I said a minute ago, the Federal Reserve Bank is not federal. Trump cannot fire the chairman at the Fed. He can only replace the chairman because the chairman's term is expiring. And President Trump has said time and time again that he wants lower interest rates. And so he wants to appoint somebody. The guy he's appointing is named Kevin Warsh. He wants Kevin Warsh to lower interest rates. Now, will he do it or not? I don't know. But the reason why this matters is because lower interest rates generally lead to higher inflation. And generally, in order for the Federal Reserve Bank to continue cutting interest rates, they need to say, hey, inflation is not a problem, so we can justify lowering interest rates, because lower interest rates can make inflation worse. Why? Because if you can get a 2% mortgage tomorrow, everybody and their moms will be buying a house again. And when you have everybody trying to buy a house, you have more bidding wars. When you have more bidding wars, home prices go up. That's how it works. So now we have a situation where we don't know how long this conflict is going to last. We don't know what the domino effect of this is going to be. We don't know what the markets are going to look like tomorrow or the next week. There's a lot of uncertainty. But what we know today is that oil prices have gone up. And if oil prices stay high, that can make the inflation problem worse, which would make it more difficult for the Federal Reserve Bank to cut interest rates, which would make it more difficult for the Federal Reserve Bank to help drive down mortgage rates in the economy. Now you can start to see how many different parts of the economy get impacted. Because on one hand, President Trump wants lower mortgage rates. Well, if you want lower mortgage rates, one of the things that can help is the Federal Reserve Bank cutting interest rates. But for the Federal Reserve Bank to cut interest rates, they need inflation to be under control. But if oil prices are going up, it's harder to control and manage the prices of things. Now, there's a case to be made that the United States is effectively in control of Venezuela right now. If you remember earlier in 2026, the Trump administration also went into Venezuela and captured the president of Venezuela. Venezuela is also a very large producer of oil, although they haven't been able to produce that oil because of their very bad supply chain, very outdated supply chain. President Trump wants to bring more American oil companies into Venezuela. That way they can start drilling for more oil and start bringing more oil out and make some money for Venezuela, but then make money for the American oil companies as well by bringing more of this oil back to the United States. But that's not something that's going to be happening today or tomorrow. That's why this oil move is so important. And so there's a lot of geopolitical changes happening. And you also want to be paying attention to the value of the dollar. Because when people are concerned about the dollar, that can create more effects and impacts to the economy and the prices of stocks and the prices of gold. Because we've already been seeing a flight of investments away from the United States. Why does this matter for you in the United States when you think about your retirement? Because if you have money sitting in a 401k, the money in your 401k is sitting in the United States stock market. But what causes stock prices to go up? Well, you might say, Jaspreet, if companies are making more money, if their earnings are growing, stocks are going to go up. And that's partially true. but that doesn't give you the full picture. At the end of the day, the price of a stock, or any asset for that matter, isn't just how good it is. It depends on supply and demand. Meaning it depends on how many buyers there are for that stock. When there are more buyers than sellers, the price of the stock goes up. When there are more sellers than buyers, the price of that stock goes down. So now when we think about concerns about the dollar, well, what we've been seeing happen for the last 10 years is investors have been looking for alternative places to invest their money outside of the United States. And it's been accelerating over the last 12 to 18 months. If investors globally look for investments outside of the United States, that means less money is going into the United States stock market. If less money is going into the United States stock market, that means less buyers in the United States stock market, which means less dollars going in, less upward momentum. Now, that doesn't mean the stocks don't keep going up. What that means is, well, if there are very high valuations, it becomes harder to support them if we don't continually have more buyers coming in. That's why you want to pay attention to this, because anytime you have these geopolitical events, it can impact many different things, including your retirement, including your 401k, because the United States is the world's reserve currency, the dollar is. The United States economy is the world's superpower. It is the world's economy. And so when anything happens in the United States, it impacts so many parts of the globe, but it also impacts every part of our economy here in the United States, because if oil prices go up, that impacts the prices of all things. If the prices of things are going up, well, that can impact how inflation is perceived. If inflation is perceived differently, that changes what the Federal Reserve Bank can do to stimulate our economy. That can change your mortgage rate. That can change your car loan rate. That can change your credit card interest rate. And now, when you have all these things happening together, this then impacts the stock market, which can then impact your 401k, and it can impact your retirement. That's why it's important for you to understand what's happening. Not just so you can capitalize on an event, but so you can understand how different changes in the economy can impact different parts of your wealth. Because at the end of the day, it is important for you to be able to take care of yourself regardless of what's happening in the economy. I know there's a lot of crazy things happening, but it's still up to you to take care of yourself, your family, and your community. And it is very helpful when you have the education to be able to do that. And that's why, again, on March 18th, I have my live investor workshop. If you haven't registered for that, I have the link for you down in the description. But I'll be keeping you posted here. There's going to be a lot of changes coming in the next days and weeks, and we'll see how things progress, but that's what we have today. So thank you for watching. If you got value out of this video, the best thank you is a referral. So if you could, please share this video with a friend, family member, colleague, or fellow investor. That way we can continue to spread this type of financial education. Thank you.